It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
But you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Unchain Wall Street. They're gonna put you all back in chains.
The truth is harsh and bitter. President Joe Biden does not like black people. This is not merely a provocative statement, but a conclusion drawn from the harsh realities of his political legacy. Throughout his career, Biden has demonstrated a pattern of behavior and policymaking that has consistently marginalized, disenfranchised, and harmed black communities, not to mention the countless offensive remarks he has made towards black people and other races. From his early days as a senator to his current role as president, the evidence of his indifference and at times outright hostility towards black lives is undeniable. Some try to justify that the man is not racist and just has poor word choices.
What is that poison? White supremacy. Oh, it is. It's a poison. Throughout our history, it's ripped this nation apart. It has no place in America.
But are his allegedly good intentions for blacks actually true? Or is he merely trying to win over a large demographic in the United States? Just take a look at this recently circulating video. In this video, we can see how Biden ignores the only black girl in the crowd while greeting everyone else. He literally walks past her to acknowledge a shorter and harder to miss elderly woman. Notice the expression of disappointment on the girl's face. This moment captured on video speaks volumes about where Biden's priorities lie when it comes to interacting with black individuals. It's instances like these that fuel skepticism and frustration within the black community, and to question whether his actions truly align with his purported support for racial equality. As the elections are approaching in a few months, we are compelled to reflect on his long-standing issue with racial prejudice, an issue that dates back to the 1970s and still lingers today. With a school desegregation lawsuit roiling Delaware, Biden led an effort in the Senate to end court-ordered busing in 1974, a blatant disregard for black children's education and opportunities.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Busing was a policy designed to transport students to schools outside their local neighborhoods to promote racial integration and equal educational opportunities. This was a crucial step in breaking down the racial barriers in education and ensuring that black children had access to the same resources and quality of education as their white counterparts. However, Biden sided with segregationists who vehemently opposed this policy. Biden's exact words can be found in the transcript of the 1977 Senate Judiciary hearing, where he said that unless they deal with the issue, his children are going to grow up in a racial jungle. His opposition to busing aligned with the interests of white families who resisted desegregation. In other words, he was willing to sell out the dreams of black students for a cheap political win. This decision had far-reaching consequences, as it delayed the progress towards educational equity and reinforced systemic barriers that black communities continue to struggle against. During the course of his 36-year Senate career, school desegregation, more than any other issue with the possible exception of crime, crystallized the political and civil rights cross-currents swirling around Biden. However, the 1994 crime bill, for which Biden was a key architect, is perhaps the most glaring example of his harmful policies towards black communities. People forget that the informal name for the bill was Biden's crime law.
Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, "I'm ashamed that I voted for the '94 crime bill." You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. In fact, I drafted the bill, as you remember.
I know that.
The bill's provisions, such as the 3 strikes rule and mandatory minimum sentences, had consequences that extended far beyond its initial passage. These measures gravely contributed to the mass imprisonment of black men and exacerbated existing inequalities within the criminal justice system. The impact on black communities was devastating. Families were torn apart, and individuals faced prolonged periods of imprisonment for nonviolent offenses. Upon release, individuals often found themselves marginalized from economic opportunities and stripped of their voting rights, further entrenching systemic barriers to social mobility. Even today, decades after the bill's enactment, the black community continues to grapple with its enduring consequences. High rates of incarceration have strained community resources, perpetuated distrust in law enforcement, and contributed to a broader sense of injustice within society.
When this bill is law, we will have 100,000 police officers on the street, a 20% increase. It will be used to build prisons to keep 100,000 violent criminals off the street. We will have the means by which we can say punishment will be more certain.
Biden has also acknowledged being civil with Democratic colleagues who openly espoused racist views, such as James Eastland, known for making derogatory remarks asserting that black Americans belong to an inferior race. He also maintained relations with segregationist figures like Herman Talmadge, who vehemently opposed school integration efforts.
Governor, this means in effect that your state would set up a private school system. We intend to maintain separate schools in Georgia, one way or another, come what may.
Can Biden truly champion racial justice while engaging with colleagues who perpetuated systemic racism? His ability to maintain civility with such figures raises questions about his commitment to challenging systemic racism and promoting equality for black Americans. Biden also developed a decades-long friendship with segregationist Strom Thurmond, who he worked with attempting to pass the Biden-Thurmond Violent Crime Control Act in 1991. Biden's decision to speak at Thurmond's funeral in 2003 was seen by some as a gesture of personal respect and bipartisanship, while others criticized it as overlooking Thurmond's troubling racial record.
We became good friends. I'm not sure exactly why or how it happened, Nancy. But you know we did.
In the lead-up to the 2008 election, Biden faced intense scrutiny for several remarks that ignited controversy and deeply questioned his sensitivity towards racial and ethnic communities. One particularly striking comment was his description of Barack Obama as articulate and clean, a statement that struck many as patronizing and implying surprise at Obama's eloquence and personal hygiene as a black man.
The first sort of mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
Another racially controversial moment was when Biden associated Indian immigrants with Dunkin' Donuts and 7-Eleven chains during a campaign stop. His remarks were perceived as stereotypical and insensitive, reducing a diverse group of people to simplistic cultural and occupational stereotypes.
In Delaware, the largest growth in population is Indian Americans moving from India. You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking. Oh, gigantic.
Biden also has an unreliable history surrounding his own involvement in the civil rights struggle. For instance, Biden claimed that he had been arrested while attempting to visit Nelson Mandela in South Africa during the apartheid era.
This day, 30 years ago, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto trying to get to see him on Robben Island.
This statement was part of Biden's broader narrative about his commitment to civil rights and his opposition to apartheid. However, fact-checkers and historians have found no evidence to support Biden's claim of being arrested while attempting to visit Mandela. Biden later clarified that he had been stopped at the airport in South Africa during a congressional delegation trip in the 1970s, but he was not arrested. Critics have pointed to this incident as an example where Biden's statements about his past involvement in civil rights issues did not align with the documented historical record.
You now say you weren't arrested and it didn't happen in Soweto. You were at the airport in Johannesburg and you were stopped from going through the door for blacks. I guess the question is, were you confused or were you just trying to embellish a story?
When given the opportunity to run with Biden in 2020, Kamala Harris's previously sharp criticisms about race faded away, and the two have worked closely together since winning the election.
Oh, I believe you that you're fully supportive of him. How does that transition happen? How do you go from being such a passionate opponent on such bedrock principles for you, and now you guys seem to be pals?
It was a debate.
Not everybody landed punches like you did, though.
It was a debate.
So you don't mean it?
It was a debate. That the whole reason, literally, it was a debate. It was called a debate.
I understand.
Everyone traveled to the debate. There were journalists there covering the debate, where there would be a debate of differences of opinion and issues. Okay. I am 1,000% supportive of Joe Biden, and I will again do everything I can to make sure he is elected.
Democrats might be eager to overlook Biden's past, but does that mean everyone else should too? Fast forward to the present, Biden's recent actions as president have done little to assuage the concerns of those who believe he harbors a disregard for black lives. While he has made some efforts to address racial inequality, such as appointing diverse leaders and proposing reforms, these actions often feel more performative than substantive. Up to this point in the video, our focus has been solely on his issues regarding racial prejudice. However, a new concern has emerged recently: his senility. In recent years, critics and commentators have pointed to instances where Biden has appeared to stumble over words, lose track of thoughts, or exhibit forgetfulness during discussions. Let's take a look at some instances, shall we?
I'm not introducing me, Mark is. So thank you all. God bless you all. Let's go lick the world. Let's get it done. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed. Have a good time. Thank you for your service from the bottom of my heart. Really. Happy Thanksgiving. See you all. Oh, who am I giving this to?
We are a community that relies on family, on Mohan.
Middle class was built by the middle class, and the unions built the middle class. Now that we are back together here in Cambodia, I look forward to building even stronger progress than we've already made. And I want to thank the Prime Minister for Colombia's leadership and the ASEAN chair.
And to say to President Biden, can you hear me, President Biden? This is a historical moment for Brazil and for the U.S. President Biden, can you hear me? You can? Yes, good.
These observations have fueled discussions about whether Biden's age and the demands of the presidency are affecting his mental sharpness. Supporters of Biden argue that occasional verbal gaffes are not uncommon for public figures, and that there is allegedly no conclusive evidence of cognitive decline impacting his decision-making abilities. However, skeptics continue to raise questions about the potential implications of Biden's cognitive state on his presidency, especially in handling complex domestic and international challenges. What would become of the future of the United States if its president for the new term were already suffering from dementia? But anyway, that is a topic for another day. The important thing to remember is that regardless of your stance on Biden, we always ought to be careful when trusting people in politics. This I'm sure most of us know already. Politicians often present their most favorable selves when elections are approaching, as they're eager to win over voters with promises and kind words. It is during these times that their intentions can seem the most genuine and their commitments the strongest. However, the heightened kindness and attention to issues can sometimes be more about securing votes than a true dedication to change.
I might also say that when they need what, that's when they come to us. Right. And after that, hey, you don't see them.
Of course they do. They only use it for their game when they're trying to win an election.
I'm going to be honest with you. I genuinely feel that way. I find that when black people, when it's time to vote, they kind of like go to the black community like, we have your vote, we have your back, right? And black people are like, yeah, and then it's like as soon as, you know, the vote's done and you have it, it's like you drop us like a hot sack of potatoes and you just like walk away from us. It's like you don't do anything for our communities, you don't do anything for like us in general.
Most of the time, they don't do what they're supposed to do for black people. So it's like no matter what, they're gonna vote for us anyway, because that's how we've been conditioned to vote for Democrats.
Ultimately, the true test of a politician's character lies not in their pre-election charm offensive, but in the actions they take once in office. Do not be fooled by the pre-election song and dance. The real fight for our communities starts when the ballots are counted. It's up to us to hold these politicians' feet to the fire and demand they deliver on their promises. We here at Black Journals will be watching, and we know you will too. So stay loud and never stop fighting for what's right. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more truth-telling that matters to our community. See you next time.